Being an indie game developer is difficult. Not only do you need to make every single element well coded by oneself, including in-game, interface, and interesting sound effects, you also need to showcase these elements through levels. And that's why level designing is not just a piece of art, but a bar to limit its true potential, which is exactly what this creator overlooked. The game is called Apple, which is released by the most famous creator out there, Patch. The levels are, well, honestly, mostly terrible, and yet level 4 is infamously regarded as effortless, meaningless, and just weird. There's quite an evident reason for this. All these levels revolve around some sort of gimmick, like this one's about wall jumping, and that's about worms, and level 4 is seemingly revolving around nothing. Why would this happen? Surely, such a well-known creator wouldn't dare to create this abomination left without answers, right? We'll have to date back to the 27th of September of 2020, where it all started. Patch released a video on this day, before the game was ever so polished and even before the release. In fact, it's a sneak peek video to tell the community about this amazing game that's yet to come, which not only showcases the game's foundation, but even... I'll just let you see.
Okay, just to finish off, here is the level I've been constructing as I test my game to test that all the different mechanics are working together. It's nice just to make sure that things are working as intended.
You guessed it, that thing that's looped with random stuff is version 1 of level 4. Sure, it's a bit different, but there's no doubt that's where it started. Back to the video first.
Checks that I can bounce on the heads, I can make gaps, I can fit down holes, all the different enemy types are working. Wall jumping, check, squishing, checkpoints.
This can probably explain why the entire level is just so weird and doesn't have a central idea. It's not even meant for playing. Then on the 21st of December 2020, 86 days after the sneak peek, the game was initially released in version 1. Besides further development, he had to be working on other levels, including tweaking level 4. For all of you wonderful ladies and gentlemen that are wondering, if he simply took that one as one of the main levels, why is it the 4th level, not the 1st? The game's level is based on a difficulty scale, where the first level is the easiest and the last being the hardest. This beta level is not necessarily alright for players to start off, I assume, and so Patch decided to put it in the Goldilocks zone, level 4. Not long after the community realized this, and honestly, I'd say they are rather positive, as if Patch has made this deliberate decision as an Easter egg. But is it worth it to sacrifice the entire project's quality just for a tiny secret?
If you post a video of the beta level online, like Patch did when he posted his video about how to make an appel level, that can create a lot of problems, like having a bunch of random stuff crammed into the same level. He took the beta level he made for that video about how to make an appel level, and he used it for level 4, even though it doesn't really fit the first time you get there.
Now let's dig a bit deeper on Patch's decision and how it caused a complete mess because of these inconsiderate decisions. And before we start, please do understand that while Patch may be the game's developer, it doesn't grant him expertise in level design. There's a slight gap between game design and level design.
This commentary is more from a design perspective. As a creator, I have an idea of how levels are made and how all that stuff works.
Exactly. As we've noticed, level 4 is twisted from a beta level, which, as Centyme has said, a bunch of random stuff crammed into the same level. For all of you wondering, ladies and gentlemen, why is it an issue in the first place? The more random, then the more fun and surprising. In Super Mario Bros. U, every single level is based on a main element, from the very first to the very end. It could be an enemy type, an interesting tile, a different gimmick, a literal style, or even just a power-up. Why would Nintendo do that? Simply speaking, it makes the levels unique, but don't take my word for it. Thief Gaming has investigated NSMBU to determine what makes a good Mario Maker stage, and here's what he said.
Focusing on only a couple of elements is a good idea for several reasons. It helps us to stay focused while building the level. It allows us to properly introduce all ideas. It reduces noise in the level and makes it easier to read for the player. And finally, limiting ourselves to only a couple of core ideas often helps not to get overwhelmed by all the possibilities in Mario Maker, and helps us to actually find out about all the amazing things possible by just mixing together a couple of elements.
And yes, can't argue that it can be set for all platforming creation engines. Undeniably, having consolidated a main element is the basic foundation for a well put together level, which is what GriffPatch overlooks. Understandably, and again, he's a game dev, not a level designer. Now, as the creator himself clearly mentioned that the level was made for testing purposes to make sure the game is working as intended, it is what we call a beta level. New Super Mario Bros. U has around 100 unused levels, and I'll give you some time to come up with some adjectives in your head that describe what you see on the screen right here. Weird, unpolished, funny, random. I mean, these are just rough sketches hastily drawn on napkins by developers. Of course they are just absolutely bonkers. Could you imagine if this level right here made it into the actual game? No matter how you twist them, tweak their layouts, or sprinkle magic mushrooms, they remain disjointed with the carefully crafted progression of the main levels. I think you know where we're going with this now. Level 4 has the most assets in the game. Crushers, Goombas, these tiny guys, Saw Blades, a Misfits Hole, and a Big Bertha. Diving deeper, there's quite some more problems with its twisting. A part that he changed is this part right here, and Lukex will tell you how it turns worse because of its tweaking.
And then the apples, 3 apples above it, I also don't like it, it's weird. And it's kinda hard to get it because you have to fully jump, make full jumps.
Basically, randomly a section with a super high skill cap that is fused with inconsistency, because it's not well thought out. Back to you, Lukex.
Goomba part with half tile blocks is pretty random, because that makes sense, and the half tile block holes is pretty weird, you can't even wall jump on them, or side jump.
As you can see, unpolished. Sure, making a level to experiment with these elements is what a good game dev should do, but not twisting the napkin and slapping it in the middle of this beautifully crafted game. It simply lacks the polish, narrative coherence, and the thematic consistency required for a seamless adventure. My friend actually came up with an interesting metaphor to describe this. Imagine you ordered a plate of food in a restaurant. The food was great, except for the fact that you can't stand the spiciness in the food. So you carefully take the peppers out one by one that is sprinkled all across the dish using a pair of forceps. And after hours of grinding, you're finally done, and you take a large bite. The spice has little to no change. When the pepper is mixed with the food when it's cooked, no matter how hard you try, it's impossible to emit any form of spiciness from the food. And the best you should do is to leave that dish alone and order new ones that isn't spicy. The same applies. No matter how you twist a level that's supposedly for beta testing, the randomness is already blended in and you might as well make a new one. Besides, it's eventual to perceive this tweaked level as a lack of effort, way more than a surprising Easter egg. Or perhaps it might show a rush in development, and seeing the game hasn't been updated since release, it's quite obvious that GriffPatch has stepped aside and shows how he just wants to get it done and out of the way, at least to some extent. Then what should GriffPatch do? There's quite some approaches to this. First of which is what large dev teams would do, that is just leave them alone somewhere in the game files. Perhaps modders can unravel them, but it's utterly the most unimportant and shouldn't be forcibly added. Second of which, I'll let Centyme explain it.
I feel like those features should have been distributed throughout the levels. Maybe like having added a couple more levels might fix that issue.
Indeed, a lot of these unique elements were never further introduced throughout the main levels, and I'm sure there's unraveled creativity that belies in the small amount of levels.
But GriffPatch didn't do that. Instead, he took the beta level he made for that video and he used it for level 4.
And lastly, and more straightforwardly, just add an extra stage that's outside the main levels. perhaps called secret beta area or something else. You don't have to tweak it or forcibly add stuff in, but it's a bonus for people who had successfully completed the game. All in all, Apple is a great game thanks to its level editor. If it hadn't existed, the cavity of level 4 probably spreads more gloom than it currently had. Again, the game development is absolutely amazing, but he probably could have handled this better.